Hi, and welcome to episode number 6. So I haven't done a interview for a couple of months, I think, because I've been crook and you can't cough at interview, I decided. So welcome to our interview for tonight. There's Tracey.
Hi, nice to meet you.
So Tracey, tell me, when did you actually start playing sport?
Oh, very young. I actually started off, mum was Irish, so I don't know if you can call it a sport, but I actually started off Irish dancing.
Oh, wow.
She was very into me Irish dancing. That didn't last as long as she hoped. But yeah, and swimming. So those were my two very early sports.
Yep. Okay, and you've obviously got an accent that's not Australian. So, whereabouts did you grow up?
So I grew up in London, just on the outskirts, kind of halfway in between Harrow School, and Wembley Stadium
Yep, yep. And so, talking
in
about
the
Wembley,
UK.
I assume that you played soccer if you were in the UK.
I very much played soccer, a lot of it. Yeah.
So, how old were you when you started playing soccer?
I reckon I was about 8 when I finally went from playing with the lads in the playground to having the courage to tell mum that Sunday shouldn't be taken up by travelling to the other side of London and dancing on a stage in a dress, but should be putting shorts and t-shirt on and playing football down um, against mainly boys, with boys. Yeah.
Yep. So, this would have been what decade would that have been?
80s,
Yep.
early 80s. Yeah.
So yeah, so there weren't many girls playing soccer in those days.
None really. I found a few more as I got a bit older and a bit more into it. But initially, no, I was just playing with the boys in the playground. One of my primary teachers realised that I was half decent, so I was the only girl on the school football team. Actually, I was captain when we got to the finals, and in those days it was allowed that the other team could make a call on whether they wanted to play against the girl. So I played the final standing on the sidelines watching my team play because the other team decided, or the other school decided, that they didn't want to play against the girl.
Oh my God. So you were
Yeah,
that scary. You were that good as at primary
apparently.
school that they were too scared to play against you.
I'd like to think of it that way. Yeah, I don't think it was
Yeah.
entirely true.
No, it's people these days don't kind of realize the sorts of things we grew up with. Much the same with football. AFL
Yeah,
football in Australia, sort of, paralleling, what was happening with soccer back then as well. So as you grew older, were you still able to play soccer? So through your teen years?
I was able to play soccer mainly. I still played in the playground with the boys, but I finally found some teams um, that were put together mainly by other girls whose dads were into soccer, and then would get involved and would get us together. But quite early in my teens, we were talking five-a-side tournaments because we didn't have enough for full teams.
Yep.
Um, and then I started playing for Wembley, um, and that's when it started to take off a little bit in terms of there were enough people to play 11 aside with other female teams.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So pretty much one of the pioneers of women's football then in London then.
Or I don't know if I'd say that, but
Oh,
yeah, still to the point where we'd be waiting for the boys to come out the changing rooms, and if you had short hair, you were just pointed towards the boys' changing rooms because they would just assume that
Yeah.
you're all boys.
Yeah.
And when you're that young, you don't look any different, really. So
True.
so
Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah.
pretty early on. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it takes a lot of determination and some self-worth to actually persist when it's not the norm for girls to be playing. So good on you.
Thank you. But I think I was lucky. I was surrounded by people who kind of just made it normal.
Yep.
And me playing with the boys was normal. I didn't really know this until, that happened to me in the finals, that I was
That you
kind
were
of different.
different.
Yeah.
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 So, yeah.
All right. So fast forwarding then, you're now in Australia. When did you move to Australia?
I am a COVID refugee. So I came January 2020
Uh-huh.
for a 10-day visit.
And haven't left.
And the person I came to visit is ruined the day because I haven't left yet.
Uh-huh. Right. So it was not the initial intention to move to Australia. It just kind of happened that way.
That's right. Yeah, I was actually working in China, and so I came here for Chinese New Year holiday
Uh-huh.
and ended up, yeah, staying. Yeah.
So, once COVID was, well, I won't say over because it's not over, but once things got under control and the world started to open up again, why'd you stay here?
Well, I had a dog in China that I was gonna go back to, and unfortunately, she didn't survive. And I kind of reassessed things and was enjoying. I've been teaching internationally since 2005.
Yep.
So um, it was the first time since 2005 that I'd been in an English speaking country. And I went, oh, you know what? I'm quite enjoying it. And I'm quite enjoying being back in a Western country. And Australia you're so outdoorsy. And I just love being outdoors. I love playing sport. And Melbourne just has so much sport
Yes, we do.
that I couldn't drag myself away from Melbourne. So I ended up, trying to stay, and it all worked out well in the end.
Which is a bonus for us. So looking then at playing sport now, so sort of what age around about are you now?
So I'm in my mid-40s.
Yep.
Now.
Yeah.
And
then
was always a soccer player. Yeah.
Yep. And so you found yourself in Melbourne.
Yeah.
And what drew you to switch codes?
I don't know if I was initially thinking about switching codes. So everywhere I've been internationally, I've always joined a soccer team. Sorry.
Yep.
Because that's where I find my people, and that's my social life, and that's, I'm not a very nice person when I don't exercise and just get going on a football pitch. So and it always works really well. So my initial thing when I first came here was, I need to join a soccer team. I need to make friends. I need to get to know the community. And so that's what I did. So I initially started off at a local soccer club.
Yep. Yeah.
And
it
then
gets tricky here because we call in Melbourne football is AFL.
Yeah.
It's not soccer.
Yeah.
That you would have grown up with soccer being footy. So
Yeah. So I get it mixed up quite often, but I try and catch myself on if I notice I'm doing it. So then I was actually sat on the balcony having a coffee in between a lockdown, and this quick kicks thing popped up on my Facebook, and I was finding it tough because the soccer scene here is still quite young.
Yep.
And there was no, even though I'd played with younger people most of my life as I got older, there was no options, and I was starting to find that chasing after 16-year-olds on the football pitch or soccer pitch wasn't maybe the best for my body, especially straight after lockdown, going back into a sport full on with the age of my body. So I was starting to think about, I wonder if I'm getting a bit old for this. And then this Quick Kicks pops up and talks about this community of women who are trying out footy for the first time, and that most of them are kind of over 35 and much more around my age range. And I thought, oh, I might pop down and see what this is all about.
Yep. And you did.
And I did.
Yeah. And before you knew it, you're actually playing football with a team.
Yeah, well, I kind of did it all roundabout and not in the way that I was supposed to follow the pathway. So yeah, I met some great people, a couple of whom, one especially was quite involved with the non-contact with you. And so it just happened to be the end of the season by this point. So I did my, I think it's 6 quick kick sessions.
Yep.
Went to the end of season do, had a few drinks, and woke up the next morning having signed and registered for a carnival in Adelaide for a sport that I'd never played. And yeah, went to Adelaide and played with a great bunch of people from all over Australia and was hooked. Came back, did some non-contact, and then got into the contact season. So I kind of did it in a roundabout, messed up way, but it worked.
There's all different pathways.
Yeah, and I'm just completing my first full season.
Yeah, which is exciting. And your team has made it into the finals too. So that's exciting.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
So great experience for me, definitely.
Yeah, pretty full on, yeah.
Yeah.
And off to carnival again this year?
Definitely off to carnival again. Yeah.
Yep. So
looking forward to that, and it'll be nice and sunny this time. So
yeah, absolutely. Adelaide was a bit cold last year.
yeah.
So for those that don't know, National Masters run a carnival and a national carnival every year in a different sort of area of Australia, and teams from every state and territory in Australia go and play competition and spend 8 days somewhere and spend all of our money and boost their coffers for the 8 days and have a good time. And it's all people over 35. So yeah, we get to meet lots of other like-minded people from all other states. And you'll find this year when you go, you'll go, oh, I met you last time. And yeah. So it's great to be around other people that love sport as much as we do. So yeah.
And men and women, it's a great mix.
Yeah, I think there's something like 1,500 people going to carnival this year, and Victoria is close to 300, and we've got over 35 side, an over 40 side, and a non-contact team as well. So for the women, so it's growing each year, which is good to see. So when you played your first game of footy, proper footy, which was at carnival, how did you feel?
I feel more nervous now than I did then, because everyone was so welcoming. everyone was so calm and so friendly, and everyone had the attitude of just get in there and go for it. Just do what you can, try your best. And I love that everyone has that kind of attitude of, everyone has their limits and you know what your limits are, and you just play to the best of your ability, and it doesn't matter what your ability is. So, yeah, I felt quite calm, whereas now running on, I feel quite nervous because I have expectations of myself, whereas I didn't at Carnival, and nor did anybody else. So that worked out quite well.
Yeah. So, what was I trying to say? So when you say expectations of yourself now, I guess that's because you're more aware of the game and sort of starting to understand the rules and because it's actually quite a complex game, which I don't think some people appreciate. And, sort of knowing where to go, what you need to do, tackling, all that sort of stuff. It's a lot to learn. And then, the more you learn, the more do you discover that you don't actually know.
Yeah. Yeah, so many more rules than soccer, and I'm starting to get my head around the rules, and then you start feeling like, okay, I can play this game. I know the rules. And then you go, oh, but actually somebody will say to you, right now we want you to play in this position, and I've never heard that position before because I've watched it on TV and I've watched other teams play and kind of know the rules, but that doesn't mean I know where the pocket is, or that's not a word I've ever heard before. So yeah, that's quite interesting. And
Yep.
then once you start getting used to that, you then you go, okay, now I'm ready to tackle, but then you don't want to hurt anyone by tackling them wrong. And there's a few different rules between, of course, Masters and what I see on the TV.
Yep.
Or in a stadium. So then you start learning that. Then once you start learning all that, you start thinking tactics, and you go, oh my god, there's just so many things to learn, and quite at times frustrating because I've played a sport for such a long time that I'm relatively good at and know everything about, and have come into a sport thinking I can do this. It's another ball sport and it should be transferable. And even just silly things like judging the flight of the ball, because it's a totally different shape. I'm so used to being able to judge where the ball's going to go, and all of a sudden I can't. Or I can judge a bounce, and all of a sudden I have no idea where that ball's going to go. And I sometimes look a bit silly by going, I think it's going to go there, and it's gone over there somewhere.
I think we all do that. So you're not alone there.
So it can be a little bit frustrating because I've got so used to being, knowledgeable and half decent at sport. And but at the same time, it's been such an amazing challenge, and putting yourself out there and learning something new has been a great experience. But most of all, just being surrounded by such amazing, supportive people. Even people from other teams don't mind me saying halfway through a game, what was that for? And why did that happen? And they'll, as long as the ball isn't coming in our direction, they're happy to stand and explain to me, and understand that everyone on the pitch is still, well, not everyone, but a lot of people are still learning, and people have come across to footy for the first time sometimes.
Yep. So it's nice to hear that you've found that, people have been very supportive, even though we're playing, in a competition and there's, winners and losers and everything. Sometimes people can get a bit carried away, but we have to remember we're not going to be drafted to the AFLW. No one's out there scouting for over 35 players.
I don't think I'll be playing for the Bulldogs tomorrow, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, true. And so I guess, what do you get out of being involved in a community sport?
Well, for me, initially, I'm getting to know people. I've come here, I have no family here. I have a few people that I know, but I don't have kind of a friend base or a community base. So that was the number one. Number two, I get to play a competitive sport. I still enjoy playing competitive sport, but I get to play amongst people of my own age, where I'm not getting frustrated or even injured because I'm trying to keep up with that 16-year-old that's just run past me with the ball that I need to go and tackle, and throwing myself all over the place trying to make that happen. And the community is amazing. So, like you said, I recognize so many people after being to Carnival, even in the teams we play against. And so after a game, everyone hangs out, they have something to eat. We sometimes have a drink together. Sometimes a club's putting on a fundraiser, so everyone hangs out for their due, or there's always something happening. So it gives me a sense of community as well.
Yep, which is what community sport should be all about, shouldn't it?
Definitely.
All right.
Like last week, we went and watched someone's son play in their grand final.
Yep.
Yep. Just from the team went down. That's stuff you don't do unless you have that community.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So anything else that you think we need to know about the Tracey story?
No, not really. I just think it's great that there's something that's, after traveling, I've worked in a lot of countries where I couldn't find soccer, especially the more Middle Eastern countries, and got myself in trouble for starting up coaching girls teams for the school, and getting in a little bit of trouble sometimes for doing that. And so I've had to, at certain times, not play, and realize that that's what kind of my life revolves around, often socially. And so I've had to adapt a couple of times and play Gaelic football or something, which I got shoved in goal for because I accidentally slide tackled someone and didn't realize you weren't allowed to do that. But so I just think, out of all the countries I've lived in and been to, the way footy is here and the pathways is the best I've seen in the world, without a doubt. The fact that there's opportunities for everybody,
Yep.
no
And,
matter who you are, what age you are.
That's not always been the case. So, there's a lot of women behind football sort of driving and giving women opportunities to do a sport that they've probably watched all of their lives, and potentially never thought that they'd actually could play themselves. So it's fantastic that there are those opportunities out there these days.
And that's another amazing thing about being part of this community, is I'm surrounded by absolute legends and pioneers who all have their own story and have battled through, those times where maybe women weren't as able to play a sport. And just hearing those stories, and knowing that it wasn't just soccer in the 80s in the UK that had those troubles, and just but how far you guys have come in such a short time is amazing. And yeah, talking to those people is just so enlightening.
Yep. Fantastic. All right. So soccer tomorrow night. The
Yeah.
Matildas.
Oh, don't ask me
Versus-
this question.
This is England. Yep. So your heart's in England, but if the Matildas win, yay as well.
Listen, I adopted the Matildas as my second team. I've said from the beginning, I'm still England through and through at the moment. But if England don't go through, I'm full on for Matildas. We've got tickets to the final.
Oh,
I've
how
got my
exciting.
Matildas shirt. I've got my England shirt. So I've been wearing them. Tomorrow night I won't be able to wear them. So
Yep.
tomorrow night will be the first game where I haven't worn the shirt of,
Yep.
well, I'll still be wearing the shirt of the country I support, but I won't be wearing my Matilda shirt. So that'll be a first.
Yeah.
But yeah, and again, what an amazing experience being in Australia when the Women's World Cup is on, and watching again the crowds. Even just in the time the World Cup's been on, the crowds have increased
Oh,
at the
yeah,
game.
absolutely. Absolutely. And the television coverage and the amount of people watching it at home, breaking all sorts of records.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
beating all the men's sport, which is fantastic. So
That's one thing I've noticed about Australia, actually. The support for women's sport, although it's been a battle, is amazing here. Even the AFLW, going a couple of times to that, in between lockdowns, it was amazing how
yeah,
many people were there supporting it. It's
absolutely.
pretty impressive.
Okay. All right. So, well, we're running out of time. So thanks very much for talking to me tonight, Tracey.
No, thanks for having
And
me.
if you're listening, think about subscribing and liking the channel, and look forward to the next interview. And if I can find stop recording.
Go